Hi everyone, for today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Viseart Highlight and Sculpting Palette. As you can see here, it is a very nice palette that has 3 sculpting colors and 3 highlighting colors that can work on an array of skin tones. Now, I bought this off of beautylish.com and this retails for $80. And as you can see here in the packaging, it looks very similar to the other 2 products that I purchased and reviewed from Viseart, and it is actually their blush palette. So the one here that I'm pointing at right now is the Coral and Rose palette, and the one here is actually the Plum and Bronze, so they are the same. And this pan also holds 24 grams of product, and that equals around to 4 grams of product on each pan. So I've actually used this on a number of occasions for work, mainly because I don't really like to contour and highlight a lot when I'm working. And the reason why is because when I'm creating makeup looks, I actually prefer to have very radiant, fresh looking skin. So the only time that I sculpt and highlight is when I am working with like an actor or an actress or a person when they are on stage, because you know, stage lights are actually very strong and they can really tend to wash out features. So, but anywho, so for this video, I would just like to get to know this palette more, and I just thought that it was a good idea if we get to know this together. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to apply makeup on this side of my face, and I'm gonna leave the other side bare so that we can just see the difference when we're applying the sculpting and the highlighting colors as we go along. And also one other thing I do want to tell you guys that it's also quite cloudy today, so the lighting is gonna change every so often. All right. Alright, so for this video, I'm actually applying a much more medium coverage foundation on my skin because I just want to create a much more even skin color on my skin, and I just want to make sure that I minimize the appearance of the shadow of my beard so that you guys can see how the contour colors are going to look like on my skin. Now, what we're going to do first is we're going to try the contour colors. Now, as you guys can see here, there are 3 colors, right? So of course, the shade here is the lightest one, and this will work with people who have much more lighter skin tones because with me, if I use this, it's almost the same color as my skin tone. I can use it to a certain degree, but I think it's just going to make me look ashy because it has a lot of more neutral and like a mix of white pigments. Now what will work for me is this color here, the one in the middle. This will work with people who have medium skin tones, and the great thing also about this is that you can actually mix the colors together, but just be wary because this color here is quite deep, and this works more with people who have deeper skin tones. And if we look at it here in the palette, like it has a purplish tint to it, so it's on the cool side, it's still on the neutral side. But if you use this like with people who have skin tones like mine, or with people who have even much more lighter skin tones than I do have, this will actually look muddy on the skin. So just be very careful with that, okay? Now, what I'm gonna do first is I'm going to use the lightest shade first, and this will be the initial color that I'm going to apply on my cheeks. So I'm just gonna load this brush with that color, and I'm just gonna flip it over, and at the 45-degree angle, I'm just kind of hugging my cheekbone, and I'm just lightly brushing it. So this is just creating the initial wash of color that I want, because you know, the thing is when you're doing contouring on the skin or on the face, you have to make sure that everything is well blended. And since this is the lightest color, this will just give us the initial, like it's like when you're doing your eyeshadow, like you have this transition color. So this is the exact same thing that I'm just doing. I'm just using this as a transition color. And one other thing, by the way, because one of the main ingredients of this palette is talc, so this is powder, so it's always important that before you apply the sculpting and highlighting palette on your skin, you have to make sure that you have set your foundation with powder, or if you're not using any foundation or tinted moisturizer, just make sure that you have a very thin layer of powder on your skin so that the colors here will glide smoothly on the face. Alright, so what I'm doing right now is I'm just building the color and making sure that we have a nice transition of color into the cheeks. Because when you're sculpting, remember that you are working with the bone, so you have to create that diffused color so that it looks like it's blending well into the skin. And because, like, you know, a lot of people right now are doing contouring and highlighting, and truthfully, contouring and highlighting was invented for the stage, and when you are on stage there's so much light, the light is very strong, so we don't really get that when we're working in the office, we're in the mall or in the grocery. So just remember that when you're doing something like this, when you're doing contouring and highlighting, just make sure that you use less products, because more is not really more, and more is not beautiful. So again, make sure that you blend everything out. Alright, so that's my initial color down, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip the brush over to the part where I have the clean side, and I'm going to pick up some of this medium tone here, and I'm just going to remove some of it at the back of my hand, just so that we don't have a lot of product or color on the brush. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm just applying the color starting here at the very back area where my hairline meets my ear. And I'm just using very small strokes, short strokes, just to build the initial color. And then I'm just going to start to brush the brush under my cheeks to create the intensity that I want. And I'm also sculpting my cheeks a bit so that it really hugs my cheekbones. Alright, and as you can see right now, it's already making my cheekbones quite sculpted. And if I look straight at you here on the camera, you can really see that this part is well highlighted and my cheekbones are already coming out. And mind you, I'm not adding a lot of contouring color on my cheeks, because actually less is more. Okay, I just want to add a little bit of some intensity, and I just want to continue blending until we get that very nice shadowy effect that we're going for. Okay, so what I'm doing is that I'm actually adding the contouring color. Like, you have to really feel where your bones are. You have to know where it starts and where it ends. So with me, my cheekbone roughly ends somewhere here. And when I smile, you see this thing here. So that's actually where my fatty cheeks actually hit on my cheekbone. So if I want to slim down my face some more, I would extend the contouring, but I don't really want to do that because I much prefer to work with the natural contours of my face. And one other thing, when you're applying contouring products on your face, make sure that you're applying it by facing the mirror forward. Do not apply contouring products by facing to the side, because you will tend to apply more contouring products than necessary. Alright, so that's it. So as you can see, I have a little bit of shadow here, especially if I'm looking straight at you. I have some shadow going on here. And what this does is that it's making this part of my face and making my cheeks here come forward. So this actually is quite good. Now, if I want to enhance this cheek some more, like if I am working with someone on stage, or if the lighting is quite strong and all of the intensity of the light washes out my features, I get a brush like this, and I load the brush a little bit with the product, and I would just tap it right along the bone. As you can see here, it's already building intensity. And then I'm going to remove the excess at the back of my hand, and I'm just going to brush it upward so that it blends with the curvature of my cheekbones. Alright, and with the brush that I used earlier to set my foundation with powder, I'm just lightly buffing it along the areas where I applied the contouring, just so that it blends out the edges and it makes it more natural. So I actually want to deepen this part a bit, just so that my cheekbones here would really pop out. Okay, so as you can see, when I move my face, the color is not muddy at all. It still looks very shadowy, very neutral, which is the color that we want in a contouring product. Alright, so before we continue, I'm gonna swatch the contouring colors one by one so that you guys can see how it looks like on my skin. So I'm just gonna move a little bit here. So this is the lightest shade. So it's a very neutral beigey powder. All right, and this is the medium tone, and as you guys can see, it has more warmth in it, but it still leans towards the gray side of the scale, so it's still very neutral. And the last color that we have here, as you can see, it's almost the same color as my shirt, but it's even darker. But this one, again, it's still neutral. It still leans toward the cool side because to me, it registers to have a little bit, a hint of like purple on it. So this will work with people who have very deep skin tones. All right, I was actually blabbing about the highlighters when I had a delivery come in. So I'm gonna start again. So the highlighters here, as you can see, we have 3 colors, and this can work with an array of skin tones. So the first color that we have here is this color, and it's actually quite light. And although here on screen, and if we swatch it, I'm gonna swatch it here right below its contouring color. It appears to be white, but it has some warmth to it, which I like because I really don't like it when highlights are too white because they will appear ashy on the skin. So it has a nice pearlescent sheen, and it has a hint of gold in it. So very, very pretty color. And the next color that we have here is this color. And if we swatch it here, I know that it looks golden again, but if we look closely in the pan, and if I swatch it again here on the finger, I know you can't see it, but it actually has a much more rosy hue to it. So it can work also with a lot of medium skin tones, or with skin tones that have much more a pinker undertone, because it's just going to seamlessly incorporate the color into the skin. And of course, the last color here, it's very obvious. It's like very golden. It's like the color of honey or like amber. And if we swatch it under, it has a very nice warmth to it, nice pop of color. This will work very well with people who have deeper skin tones. It's going to be amazing. All right, so let's add highlights. And I actually want to use this color here, this nice rosy tone, and I'm just going to apply it right on top of my cheeks here, and I'm just going to blend it downwards. And as you can see, it's giving me a nice pop of color on my cheeks. It's very easy to apply, very easy to use, and there has like, you know, there are like micro glitters on it, but it's not very obvious. So it can afford to give you a very nice seamless color payoff on your skin. So I'm just blending it downwards. Like again, the thing with highlighting and sculpting is that you have to work with the panes of your face. And since we're working with cheekbones here and they're quite rounded, so let's just bring it down into the cheekbone so that it mixes into the contouring product. And we get a very nice blend of color. Very pretty. Okay, so I'm gonna flip to the other side and I'm gonna pick up this lighter shade now. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of that here at the highest point. And I'm also going to add some of that here, the highest point on my brow bone, just so that it gives us a pop of color. Very pretty, I have to say, very pretty. And I like that I'm actually able to mix the colors together so that we can, like, you know, intensify and give dimension to the face. So again, with the brush that I used earlier for the powder, I'm just buffing it out so that we blend the edges away and we just get a nice, like, you know, sheen of color on the skin. Very beautiful, very pretty. All right, so this is it. Now, you can actually use this palette in more ways than one, and I really don't like doing it on myself, and I don't really do it on my clients as well, but you can actually use like the contouring colors here to contour your nose. And because I'm quite lazy, so I have this nice Itabake brush here, and then it's quite flat, so I would, like, you know, load some of the product here at the very tip of the brush head, remove some of it at the back of my hand, and I just used this to add a very gentle hint of color on my nose, and I'm just buffing it out. Oh, by the way, when you are contouring on your face, try not to use like back and forth motions, because that's just going to create a muddy look, and it's just going to create patchiness. always work in one motion, because you know you won't notice it like after when you bring the brush into the part wherein you'd stop, and then you will have like the split-second decision of actually bringing the brush back up and down and back up again. You actually add pressure on the part where you'd stop, and once that happens, there's just like this intense spot of color that's not supposed to be there, and you end up blending more, and sometimes like you end up adding more color. So using this one sweeping motion can really help blend out your contouring colors extremely well. Right, so I'm just again blending out the edges of my nose contour here, and then with the brush that I used earlier for the powder, I'm just blurring out the edges. And if you find that your contouring is just too strong, you can always take a much more smaller brush, and you can always use that to blend out the edges. And I'm just blending it out together so that we have a much more seamless color application on the face. And the great thing about this palette is that you can actually use this for eyeshadow looks. So I just loaded the brush here with the amber colored powder, and I'm just applying it generously here on my eyelid. And because this has ingredients that has film forming capabilities, it doesn't really offer a lot of fallout, and it actually does stick fairly well onto the skin. This is actually a very nice color. It's a very nice, like, you know, golden tone. I'm just shifting the brush and I'm just blending it out. Very, very easy, and that can give us a very nice, like, you know, golden color. And then we can always go back and use the contour colors. So I'm using the lightest shade here, and this will be the transition shade, and I'm just going back and forth. Again, I'm just blending the edges. Then now I'm going back and picking up the mid-tone contouring color, and I'm just applying the color here into my crease, into my socket line to add more definition. Okay, now so I'm gonna pick up some of the most deepest contour color here. I'm just gonna tap the excess at the back of my hand, and I'm gonna use that to intensify my lash line. And you don't really need to use a lot of color for this, because the payoff on this palette is amazing. So as you can see, the deepest contouring shade is already enhancing my lash line. And if you want to intensify your eyes further, you can always go back and pick up some of the color here. I'm just picking up a very tiny bit of the deepest shade, and I'm going to use that to enhance my socket line, just to add more definition. Okay, and now, because I know that all of the color is now on my crease, I'm going to bring the brush down into my lower lash line, just to help open up the eyes a bit. Very pretty. Okay, so now I'm going back to the brush that I used to apply the highlighting color here on my brow bone, just to blend out the edges. Alright, so that's it for me today. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and in, you know, getting to know the Viseart sculpting and highlighting palette. And I do recommend this, like if you're someone who wants to become a professional makeup artist, having palettes like this in your kit can really help, like, you know, work with a lot of skin tones, and you don't really need to bring a lot of different colors together, because you can just mix and match accordingly. And truthfully, because I have the two other blush palettes from Viseart, these three products will work very well together, and it can, you know, help you to create a lot of customable colors, because they're made of powder, so they're buildable, so you can actually create like dimensions on it. And truthfully, having these three, it just minimizes me from bringing a lot of products, like, you know, those single pan products, because they can get quite heavy. So yeah, so if you have any more questions about the Viseart Highlight and Sculpting Palette and the other things that I've used for this video, all you have to do is to leave them down in the comments box below, and then let's have a conversation about it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you're having a good day wherever you are. Bye bye. And then the second color that we have here is actually, it's almost like, wait, there's someone in the door. A delivery arrived for me, but anyway. All right, so where was I?